history, you have to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. But if all you're going to focus on is the bad and the ugly, that's not actually history. That's propaganda.
What's happening with revisionist history, both on the left and on the right, is that they are both very much anti-American.
There's a lot of political leaders, there's a lot of academic leaders that they don't care what the truth is, they're promoting an agenda. We've been lied to on so many levels.
All over the internet, you're seeing clips that Churchill may have been worse than Hitler. The United States should have actually allied with Hitler, and not what it's done. Has America been a force for good in this world, or a force for evil? David and Tim Barton, you have been covering history for as long as I've known you, which has been a long time actually. I've really asked to call you a friend. And I wanted to bring you in today because there's a lot of confusion when it comes to history these days. And so, in some ways, in a bizarre way, maybe this is a rare moment to actually share the truth. And I look forward to engaging with our audience. I can't imagine managed to do so. So thanks for coming in and welcome to PragerU.
Thank you, glad to be here.
So what is it like working for that?
And this situation is great. I have some friends that have gone through more challenging transitions and kind of co-laboring, but because my dad's vision is absolutely mission driven, and he loves God, he loves America, he loves people, because we're able to stay kind of focused on what we do, it's great. And we've been doing this for 40 years, and I'm smart enough to go, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if I'm making a decision, the first person I call is my dad. Say, hey Dad, tell me how this happened when you and George Washington were figuring this out together, right? Like, what did y'all do? You've been doing this forever, so it's really been great.
Right, so you were one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, and it was a really fun time. I mean, what we did that entire week was really cool.
All right, no more shenanigans, but I will say about you, David, the first thing that comes to my mind is what an amazing thing it is when a father is able to have his son want to work with you and spend so much time with you. I hope that happens to me with my kids. I'm sure that any parent that is watching this, it really is, it's a testimony to what an incredible human being you are.
It's also something we can learn from history. John Adams, Wesley Adams, Charles Francis Adams, and for 200 years the Adams family have had a person involved in politics in America. And for that first generation, there are some lessons I can learn. And until my result, I mean, I learned so much from him. You know, his understands for college. He gets into areas I don't think about. And I understand from perspective. And I've got perspective that's a lot older than his perspective. All of that. And so for me to think that I can superimpose myself on him or anyone else is crazy. We just put truth out there, and the truth stand on its own. And then we take it to fly the votes where they are.
What an important thing perspective is also in studying history, right? I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's why we're here to discuss history, because of the perspective, the way history has been taught and is currently being discussed. And so now that history has been so in vogue on podcasts, both on the left and on the right, let's get into some of the main issues of the day. The first one that comes to my mind is the Smithsonian Museum. So people are just up in arms over President Trump making serious changes over there. The claim is that he's government overreach, that he's a tyrant, that he's politicizing the Smithsonian, and I would love your general reaction to is what the president is doing, even in okay in your perspective.
Yeah, I think it's certainly okay because he is the federal executive authority and those are federal museums. They are 82% funded by the federal government. Now they have outside funding as well. They used to be just strictly federal museums, if you would. And I think there's 21 or 22 in the Smithsonian system now. And you look at that, who else is going to be over? It's not certainly the people who run the museum. It's the executive that's in charge of all federal agencies, and that is his role. What it does. Constitutionally, that is a position he can exercise. And to suggest that previous presidents that have influence on museums is absolutely crazy. They did. It's just they don't like the influence that he's bringing, which is much more Americanized, much more pro-American, much less, I don't know quite to say this, but niche-driven history where you take an aspect of history and make that the only story of history. The Smithsonian has, last I knew, about 16 million historical items. They can only display thousands of those. And so what you pick and choose in your display tells a story, and that story needs to reflect what is actually there, not a niche that people want to see that happens to be popular at the time. So he's in a lot of trouble because he actually is going back to a more traditional historical approach of let's take the overall tone of what's there and let's put that out. While there are, and we certainly believe nobody's perfect, and when you tell history, you have to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can learn as much of the bad and the ugly as you can from the good, but if all you're going to focus on is the bad and the ugly, that's not usually history. That's propaganda, that's agenda. And so he has to come out much better than what he's trying to do.
Do you think that the Smithsonian has been politicized in the past, where Donald Trump is changing the direction in a way that is unfair? I mean, one of the comments that is being made against him is that he is whitewashing history in the attempt to maybe create unity, but the issue is that he's portraying America as if it's something perfect. And the claim is that yes, he's a patriot, but he is doing that at the expense of truth.
Yeah, I think that's probably disingenuous claims at best. Maybe more accurately dishonest claims. And part of the reason is we look at what the Smithsonian has said and what they present, which we happen to be in Washington, D.C. quite often. At times we'll take friends and go tour D.C. and we'll give them a history lesson in D.C. We do the Smithsonian's fairly often, and we just kind of pay attention as we go through. And maybe to give some context of this, we would say one of the least devoted places in Washington, D.C. area is Mount Vernon. George Washington's home is one of the greatest places you can go. So much, as someone that loves history, there's so much connection you feel about Vernon. It's a really special place to be. But we took a group of legislators there this summer, and one of the things they quickly acknowledged, they were frustrated because on the bus on the way over there, we were given some stories of George Washington, who he was, why he was the indispensable man, what he did contributing to the American Revolution that kept the military together, the Constitutional Convention, he keeps that together. Without him, there's no Constitution. He's the only president ever unanimously elected by the Electoral College. You can go through his accolades. This guy's amazing. Without him, there's no America. We went Mount Vernon. And not only do the tour guides spend far more time talking about the enslaved people than George Washington, the things they talk about George Washington, there's not a single highlight of a contribution of why he was a great man, of why he was special, of why there were so many monuments erected to him. And the reason he was celebrated, it's not because anybody historically ever thought he was perfect, right? People that knew George Washington, we used to have a basic understanding of human nature that people aren't perfect, right? That nobody is. And so the idea that, well, the only reason they had monuments is because they thought he was perfect, well, that's just ridiculous. No, they knew he wasn't perfect, but they recognized his contributions were so significant. That's why we gave him a monument. But the reason I say it is when the least local place in D.C. is spending far more time on the experience of the enslaved persons at Mount Vernon, and not even telling you a single thing why George Washington was great, and that's the best of the places in D.C. The Smithsonian's are only downhill from there, and I could go through dozens of examples. But the point is, what President Trump realized is what they're doing is far more anti-American propaganda than telling an honest story in context. Because in context, you might realize George Washington's not perfect. There's no question about it. But he also was one of the most remarkable leaders in that era anywhere in the world. I would venture to say, not only is he one of the most remarkable leaders in American history, I would say world history, and especially when you compare him in the context that he lived in the 1700s. Find me a world leader in the 1700s that was more impressive and remarkable as a person than George Washington. But we're not now teaching the context of history. What we're doing is we have this modern perspective, this progressive movement saying, well, look at what he did, and we know today it's wrong, therefore he's a terrible person. That's what the Smithsonian are doing. They're saying how bad America is because we participated in things like slavery, and instead of acknowledging not only the growing anti-slavery movement in America that started in the founding era that leads all the northern colonies to start passing laws not just against the slave trade, but also abolishing slavery in the northern colonies that actually lead to a war in America where white people fight against white people and the exile of black people. None of this perspective is portrayed in the Smithsonian. Only that America is evil for having slaves. And there's no doubt that is a stain, that's a blemish on the story of America. But there's more to the story that's not being told. And what President Trump has said is, let's just tell the whole story, which doesn't seem extreme or crazy.
Which includes telling the story of slavery as well.
Correct, because that's part of the American story. That's not the whole American story.
Even going past that, a lot of history used to be taught biographically. We taught the stories of people like George Washington. So let's take from Matthias to Caesar. Caesar, the first black man elected to office in America in 1641, when the white community in Maryland elected to the state legislature. Well, let's jump to someone like Elizabeth Chesel in New Hampshire, a black man elected in the white community in 1768. Was re-elected for the next 49 years, held 8 different political positions as a playful revolution, as one of the founders of that community. And let's go to, by the time of 1876, there's more than 1,000 black elected officials in America by 1876. Great Britain did not elect their first black official until 1987. Italy until 2010, and France in 2013, and so we're the oppressive country. We have 1,000 black elected, but none of that biography You tell history, the good, the bad, the ugly. Slavery is not a racial issue, it is a human issue. And that's why when you look even at Native American tribes, anthropologists and archaeologists tell us that by the time Columbus landed in